Game week has arrived as Duke football gets set to open up the 2022 season and start the Mike Elko era. Duke takes on Temple Friday night under the lights. And on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, my good buddy Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast gives a rundown of the defense, what to expect from Mike Elko's side of the football. That's coming up here on Locked On Blue Devils.
Vital. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with JJ Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. It's so great to have you here with us today. I'm JJ Jackson, and I'm the host of this podcast. You can follow the show on Twitter at LO_Blue Devils and follow me on Twitter at _JJ_Jackson_. If you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and follow this podcast for free wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch the show daily on YouTube. Please subscribe on YouTube as well. We're continuing that climb to 500 subscribers. What a big moment it is to celebrate here in the life of the podcast and in the show. So thank you for all the support that you provide. Days away at this point from the start of the football season, and I'm so excited to have my good buddy Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast here with me on today's show. And Josh, at this point on this Wednesday, we're counting down the hours to the start of the season. It is finally here, my friend. On the eve of the month of September, football season will be here in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, it's here, and we've been waiting a long time for it, and this is finally game week. It's been really neat. Duke has released more information, so we know a little bit more now heading in to the game against Temple on Friday night, and I just can't wait to see these guys get out there on the field and show what they've been doing for the last few months.
All right, so we talked a lot about the offense last week, talked about the quarterback spot. We talked on Sunday, Duke made it official that Riley Leonard was going to be the starting quarterback. And then at the end of the week, we talked about the skill position groups. Let's move on to the defensive side of the football and starting there in the defensive front. What can we expect from this defensive line group for Duke?
Well, I mean, first of all, you have the anchor there. And we begin talking about the defensive line by talking about DeWayne Carter and his leadership, his motor. No matter where a play ends up, you can pretty much guarantee yourself 90 is going to be around that football. And so he is a leader both vocally off the field as well as on the field with his play. And so it begins and ends there really with DeWayne Carter. A little bit of an interesting thing, I believe, that we have seen throughout spring and fall, Jamion Franklin winning that job there on the interior line with DeWayne Carter. Last year, I believe that was a little bit more of an Aeneas Peebles. And so Franklin, showed his stuff as his strength. He was one of those, he was the Austin 316 character, for Feely in the offseason. So I think that's interesting. And then you've got RJ Oben, who led us in sacks last year. And a lot of people, we forget that, but he led us in sacks. So those three, they are, no real surprises there other than Franklin a little bit. But then you have VJ Anthony, local product here out of Durham, Jordan High School here, and he came in from day one, spring ball. You're like, man, who is 19, right? Like that guy is tall, he's slender, but he's fast, he's dynamic, and so he won that position. And I think it was fairly obvious, actually, all through fall camp that he was going to be that starting defensive end edge rusher. And so I love the first four. I think they're going to be I think we're going to take steps up, on the defensive line. But then I'm not going to lie, I don't mind who comes in as far as a part of the two deep. I mean, if you look at it, Anthony Nelson is a grad transfer and will be very good. Aeneas Peebles is basically a starter, right? And then you have Christian Rory and Michael Larby, both who have played a lot at Duke. And then you have Michael Reese, who played a ton last year and as a part of that two deep. And so, like, at the end of the day, I think the defensive line is going to be fine. I don't know that we're going to be dominant, but I think we're going to be fine.
When you think about the defensive line for Duke football and go, a little recent over the last decade, 15 years, so to speak, what group comes to mind first? What year in particular, if any, a mixture of players that was the standard, that was really good Duke defensive line play? And then how far is the gap, Josh, from that group to this mixture of guys that we've got going into 2022?
Yeah, wow, that's a great question. I mean, I initially, and I know it's a little bit of recency bias here, but I initially go to the two NFL guys.
I figured you'd go that way.
Victor Democagey and Chris Ruff. I mean, and I forget the different years of who filled out the line there for them. But here's the thing: they were unique in the fact that they were both like aggressive pass rushers. And I mean, Big Vic was trying to break records, and Chris Ruff was, you know what I mean? And like, this is going to be a different line. So I would say the gap is fairly large, but I'm not sure it's large in effectiveness. I just believe it's different. It's a different line. Now, Coach Rob Smith has been on record saying that like his goal, as obviously every defense's goal, is to get to the quarterback with the front four and not have to, use blitzing all the time to get to the quarterback. I think VJ Anthony gives us an opportunity to do that. And I will say this: if there is one player that VJ Anthony reminds us of, it is Chris Rumpf. And so I think that's the comparison. Big Vic, Chris Rumpf, that was a really good year on the D-line. Those 2 years really with those guys. And then this unit's going to be below them, but I'm not sure that the gap is very large as far as effectiveness.
We're putting a lot of hype and praise into VJ Anthony, which is really exciting for the Duke football team as we get ready to rock and roll in this upcoming season. And obviously, it's a defense that's Mike Elko's side of the football that his entire career has been spent on. Now he's the head coach, more of the CEO of the football program. But he's going to be very passionate about what that defensive unit looks like for Duke, and it's going to start with pressuring the quarterback there at the top. Let's move back a level. Let's talk about the linebacker room, headlined by Shaka Heyward, who we have talked about a ton in the months leading up to the start of this football season. And we're going to do that in just a moment here on Locked On Blue Devils. BetOnline is a proud presenting sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils, and BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. You can find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information. From live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts, they have you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. Welcome back into Locked On Blue Devils. JJ Jackson alongside my buddy Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. All right, I teased it a moment ago, Josh, but let's go to the defensive side of the football, and let's go back a level. Let's talk about the linebackers. Tell me about this group.
Yeah, you mentioned Shaka Heyward, and, obviously Shaka is redshirt senior, team captain, preseason All-ACC, on watch lists. I mean, Shaka has earned that, led us in tackles, a couple different seasons. And he is just, he's definitely brings the stability to that position. And Dorian Musi is the starter beside him. He's actually been the starter now. I think this is possibly going into at least partially his third season of starting alongside Shaka there. And those guys play off each other well. I personally thought that Dorian made some really big strides from spring into fall. And I think we're going to see another really, really solid linebacker with Dorian there. Now, Coach Smith has told us a couple different times, as has Coach Elko, that, they're going to mix up that 4-2-5. We may see a third linebacker show. You know what I mean? We may see 3 down linemen, and we may see, who knows? Like, they're going to mix that scheme up a little bit. And so the depth of linebacker is very important. And so what we've seen there, Duke fans, a little bit of a unique thing, transfer Cam Dillon has really shown some promise there in camp, and he's worked his way into that 2 deep. He was not in the 2 deep, and he has worked his way into it. That's for sure. And then another local product, Durham Northern High guy, Trey Freeman. Trey is probably the first guy. Like if we go to a 3 linebacker set, you're going to see 12. You're going to see Freeman in there with those other 2 guys. But he will get plenty of run. I thought it was interesting. We didn't see Rocky Shelton on the 2 deep. And Rocky he sat out last year, but he stayed, connected, and now is back a part of the program. And he's just a little undersized, and I don't know. It's a pretty deep room that we've got, and Rocky just couldn't make it onto this. Nick Morris is a redshirt freshman. He did make the 2 deep. He impressed as well. And then one notable thing is Ryan Smith was a linebacker, and he is now a defensive end. And he actually did make the 2 deep there as a defensive end. And so, Ryan Smith used to be in that room, is no longer. But I think the linebackers are going to be a positive for us. You got Cyan Stevens still that didn't make the 2 deep as well, who has gotten playing time over the years. So there's a lot of guys in that room, obviously led, by Dorian Moosey and Shaka Heyward for sure.
And then, Josh, I'd love for you to speak to this as well, because it is such a deep room. Shaka Heyward gets all the headlines for this unit, as he should. He, as we said, the leading tackler coming back. He was preseason all-conference and Phil Steele publications and things like that to get the season started and ready to ramp up and that sort of thing. But when you look at the linebackers in particular, you want to earn playing time. That is one of the first position groups that you turn to on things like special teams, on your kickoff, your punt coverage, and that sort of thing. And so some of those guys that might not necessarily have a starting job on the defensive side of the football, they've still got to be incredibly productive on special team units.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And then once again, this is football as well. And there are always opportunities. There's always a next man up. There's always an injury tweak here. There's always they have to take a couple plays off here and there. And there's always opportunities. And I believe you're right. Those guys that show their worth on special teams and doing those behind the scenes kind of nitty gritty things will earn, more of those opportunities, as they come available, because they will. There's no way we'll go an entire season without some, ankle turn or somebody landing wrong or whatever it may be. And so it's really good to have depth, and it's really good to have depth at linebacker.
So let's do a projection here. So when we look at the linebacker room in 2022, on the eve of, or here we are 2 days away from the start of the Duke football season, when they take on Temple Friday night under the lights, Wallace Wade Stadium, you've got Shaka Heyward, Dorian Moosey. I would imagine those are the top 2 guys you believe going into the season, and I think you'll stay with that throughout the course of the year. So if you were to give a gold medal, a silver medal, a bronze medal to the top 3 linebackers, your projections for this 2022 season, how would that look?
Well, you got one in Shaka. I mean, that's gold medal.
He's getting the gold.
He's getting the gold. Dorian's getting the silver. And here's where I think Duke fans can expect to see Dorian a little more active. At least he has been in camp. He seems to be a little bit more of the blitzer. So I think we can see him get to the quarterback a little bit more. And so I love that. I think he's going to improve. And
that's how you get known, man. Go hit the quarterback.
Absolutely. And by the way, he's an awesome guy. He is, if you ever run into the guy in public, he is just – he's a really cool guy. So he's number 2, and I think number 3 is going to be Trey Freeman. Trey Freeman he's physically built. He's getting the bronze, and I think, next year you obviously are, no more Shaka, next year. And depending on what Dorian does, he could definitely be the leader of that room next year. There's no question. And so Trey Freeman is right there. Let's put it this way. If one of those top 2 guys goes out, we don't drop off much when Trey Freeman's your guy. So I'd give him bronze medal for sure.
All right, I love it. That's the linebacker room. We've got 1 unit left to go when we take a look at the Duke football defense. The secondary is up next after our final timeout on today's edition of Locked On Blue Devils. Thanks again for making Locked On Blue Devils your first listen every day. Now for your listen, make sure you go check out the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022. This is an 8-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NFL season. The local team experts of the Locked On Podcast Network and Odyssey NFL Insiders all combining into one Ultimate NFL Preview. Search for the Ultimate Football Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Final segment here on today's edition of Locked On Blue Devils. JJ Jackson alongside my buddy Josh Cox from Duke Football Talk's Section 17 podcast. It's a Wednesday, and I would like for you to promote your podcast, Josh, and what you have out right now.
Yeah, we just released yesterday our game week episode, so we talked all things Temple.
You guys have been waiting for this moment for a while. You've been waiting for it.
It's here. It's here. We talked, we did discuss the 2 deep as well. Because it just released earlier in the week. So we discussed that. We spoke with the play-by-play voice of the Temple Owls, Kevin Kopp. We talked to him. We gave a little bit of This Week in Duke Football history, man. We talked a little bit of history of Temple and the tail of the tape. And then we gave our predictions, talked a little bit about what we think and what we see heading into this game. So we encourage you to go over there. We also talked about doing our game predictions. This year we're giving away each week to the game prediction winner, we're giving one of our Bleed Blue T-shirts away. So if you guess the correct winning team and closest to the score, whoever does that, we're going to send them a free T-shirt. So all that stuff. So we're promoting all that. So you can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. Just search Section 17 Podcast. And then obviously on Twitter at Duke FB Talk. And then anywhere on Facebook, you just search Duke Football Talk and you'll see us. But yeah, we'd love to interact. And I appreciate, JJ having us on so often, and yeah, we appreciate the Locked On listeners for sure.
No doubt about that. Excited for football season to be here, and make sure you do go support the Section 17 podcast and also give them the 5-star ratings and reviews of the world. That means so much when you do that. So, all right, one group left to go. Let's talk secondary. Let's talk defensive backs. We're putting it all there together. Cornerbacks, safeties, everything. Yep. When you look at this unit, what stands out?
Well, it's the 5. The nickel is in there. That stands out because that's the kind of the base of what Elko wants to run. And so, really we've got these 5 guys. There's some oars on the depth chart for sure. At the cornerback position, you have Detrone Young, Speedy Young, or Tony Davis, and you have Joshua Pickett or Chandler Rivers, the true freshman. And so, honestly, I think the oars are kind of legit. Like we had already spoken about, like this was a 4-man race really for those corners. And so at the end of the day, I think it's going to be Speedy Young and Joshua Pickett as our ones, but I think Chandler Rivers could overtake Pickett very quickly as a true freshman. By the way, Chandler Rivers and VJ Anthony really being the only true freshman to crack the 2 deep. And I think the only 2 true freshmen that we're really going to see extended playing time this year, barring injury and barring something crazy. So,
and to remind people with the secondary unit, as we get going, it was at the start of fall camp where we were asked in one of our fill in the blank segments, Josh, who can we, the biggest question mark of this Duke football team. And it was this group, this unit. And so now we've got the 2 deep that's been released. I just wanted to kind of add that for context.
Yeah, big question mark.
This is a question mark, this group.
Correct. And we've spoken about this in the past as well. Lost 11 members of the secondary from last year. So then going to that nickel, you've got Brandon Johnson. He played a lot last year as well. And behind him, Cam Bergeron, who has had actually a pretty good fall camp. And then you have your safeties. And this is Darius Joyner, the transfer, big personality, kid who put up some just crazy numbers at I think, somewhere, Western Kentucky, Eastern, somewhere. But it was lower level football, but 142 tackles or something like that last year. Wow. He has a knack for getting to the football. That's all I'll say. He has a knack for doing that. I picked him to lead us in interceptions this year. And then Jalen Stinson is the other safety. Jalen, he is best known for his kickoff return prowess, and he's made a lot of preseason teams on special teams. But he's a good safety as well. And then behind those 2 guys, you have Daquan Johnson, who played a lot last year, and he's going to play a lot this year. And then Isaiah Fisher-Smith, who you mentioned special teams earlier. Isaiah Fisher-Smith was really one of the major contributors on special teams last year. And so this is going to be interesting. It's a little slim in the secondary. If we have any sort of injury take place, which typically we do, we're gonna be diving a little bit for some guys but this is part of the rebuild. And the one thing I do trust is this. I trust two things. I trust that our head coach was a secondary guy. So I trust in that.
Right.
So even if we don't have the numbers now, we will. Second thing I trust in is that our safeties position coach, Lyle Hemphill, is a former defensive coordinator in the ACC, coming over from Wake Forest. And a Wake Forest program that has put a lot of guys in the league in that secondary.
Yeah.
And so I trust those two things. I believe if guys come to Duke and they're in the secondary, they are going to be extremely well coached and they're going to be prepared and ready. So, it's a little bit of a slim unit, but we knew that. There was no way it wasn't going to be. With losing 11 guys, how in the world are you not going to be slim? But all in all, I believe we're going to be okay. Barring an injury at safety, I believe we're going to be okay.
So we've got the start of the season coming up on Friday. Let's end with this. Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast with us on Locked On Blue Devils today. The one big thing to watch for in the game on Friday night is what? You can answer that any way you want to.
Yep.
There's obviously going to be a lot of eyeballs. It's the start of a brand new era. Mike Elko's taking over this program, a new quarterback in place, a defensive unit that we've talked about all show long today. The one big thing to watch for against Temple is what?
The offensive line.
Okay.
The offensive line, there's no question, in my opinion. Can the offensive line move the defensive line? Can they open up holes for this stable of running backs that we have, for this running back by committee that we're going to be featuring? Can the offensive line protect Riley Leonard and give him time in the pocket? Something that our quarterbacks have not had. Well, last year was improved, but the previous 2 years before that were very, very bad. And so I believe that's the biggest question mark, or the thing I'm looking at the most. Our offensive line has got a couple of grad transfers, 2-3 grad transfers in that two deep. Chance Lytle, the opera singer, kind of headlining that. Andre Harris, another transfer, kind of headlining that. But those guys are going to see a lot of playing time, and it's going to be very interesting. So if we win that battle, offensive line battle, we win this game, and it's going to be fun. If we don't win that battle at the offensive line, this is going to be a nail-biter, in my opinion.
Well, I can't wait. I can't wait for the game to be here on Friday night and to be able to talk all about it with you again coming up next week. Josh, do me a favor and remind people where they can find your work and find and support the Section 17 podcast.
Yeah, for sure. You can find us on Twitter at Duke FB Talk, and then you can find us on Facebook by searching Duke Football Talk. And as JJ mentioned, we love a good 5-star rating and review, as does Locked On. And so I want to encourage you to go to both of our podcasts, give us 5-star ratings and reviews. Listen, if you're a Duke fan, you need to appreciate all media outlets that talk about Duke, and especially if you're a Duke football fan, because there's really not a ton that talk Duke football. And so we want to support each other. We appreciate the partnership that we have with the Locked On Network here at Locked On Blue Devils.
Josh, thanks so much for the time. We'll talk again next week, all right?
JJ, we'll see you later, man. Go Duke.
That's my buddy Josh Cox joining us for today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Go Duke indeed, as we are, again, hours away from the start of the Duke football season here on this Wednesday, Friday night, inside Wallace Wade Stadium. It's going to be a movie. It's going to be awesome. I'm really excited to see how it all plays out. You can connect with me on Twitter at _JJ_Jackson_ and follow our show on Twitter at LO_Blue Devils. Again, please be sure to follow and subscribe Locked On Blue Devils for free so you get the latest episode of Locked On Blue Devils as soon as it comes out each and every day. Go check out the Ultimate Pro Football Preview. Also check out Locked On ACC with Candace Cooper. That's going to do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.